Welcome everybody, it is another live stream. I can't believe how quickly they come around again. So if you can hear some weird rumbling noises in the background, it's thunder. It went through, I thought half an hour ago, but it's still rumbling away. You probably won't hear it though with the directional mic, so let's hope not, because it was really loud about 5 minutes ago. But welcome to everybody. I've said hello to everybody who's joined on chat already, I think, but if I haven't said hello, it's not that I'm dissing you, it's just I haven't noticed you sneaking in. Great to have everyone here. Now, it's another confession time. If you were hoping for Thunderbirds, that's still another month away at least. And the problem is really bandwidth. I had no idea how much time just a Kickstarter would take. And Tamsin, one of my print testers, is on here, and Crix will probably listen later. Oh, they have been amazing helping me get through there. But every time they find something, my heart falls. I'm like, oh, something else to change. It takes a while to load it all up onto the pledge manager on My Mini Factory, and it's taken a while to check everything, and I still feel like it needs another check. But the good news is the check's in the post, because Kickstarter have transferred the funds. It's in between banks at the moment, I suspect because of the weekend, because it's normally instantaneous, isn't it, bank transfers? But it should hopefully be coming over in the next couple of days, and then I'll be able to get that out and put that behind me. And then I am having a week doing lava terrain for a Shatterpoint video, and then I'm having 2 weeks off, because I know I just had a week's holiday, but it wasn't, I just need to sort the house. Boxes, still, they've been there for months and they all just need sorting. My workshop's is bad. Everything just needs a good tidy, a good clean. I need to get some more storage solutions in some rooms. I need to spray paint stuff. There's just so much to do. I don't know where to start really. So I might even start in my bedroom, which has got 3 dioramas, 6 or 7 crates, and just a pile of washing. I can't get to the wardrobe it's in to put it away. So really I'm looking forward to being able to do all that stuff and actually, you know, not just jump across a pile of stuff into bed every night. Too much information probably, but I'm looking forward to that. And then I'll be starting the next Kickstarter. And at some point I'm hoping to get some weekend modelling in, but at the moment it's been Shatterpoint and Legion, because I'm trying to play games and I need stuff based and ready for that. But let's go see if anyone's saying anything in chat. So Polite says, the usual problems, time, space, money. I have the space, I have too much stuff for the space. I don't have time. I just, for the Kickstarter, I was starting work at 8 AM and I was finishing about 10 o'clock at night. And actually I would run down when I woke up at 6:30 and check the printers and put any new prints on as well. So technically you could say I started work at 6:30 and I finished about 10 o'clock, 10:30 when I put the last prints on at night. Just trying to get through all the test prints cost me a fortune. And now I've got so much stuff, I don't know what to do with it. I've got crates of prints that are not painted, they're just tests, that you could make loads of stuff out of. I may just give it to the local shop and the local gaming store and just say, do you want to, you know, do something with this? I've got a whole Ord Ferrum board I printed. That's almost 3 boxes full. And I think that's going to go to the local shop and someone else is going to paint it. They'll pick a couple up at a time, but I might put a coat of spray paint on quickly for him. I just got so much stuff from the last couple of months just coming off the 3D printers. And now I've got 4. I can just print even more. It's not good. Not good. So, Aidan says, watching the video as I wait with great respect, you must have a very interesting dark imagination. Assuming you created the video, something I lack. Best wishes. So, all of those are just my models. So, yeah, I don't think it's dark. This is the Star Wars cut at the moment, so these are all just Star Wars ones, and Tomb Raider at the end. But yeah, it's cool. I like imagining things and creating them. It's what I like best. So Nick says, sounds like your weather is the same as here. Could well be. I don't know where you are, but I'm in Birmingham, just south Birmingham, and the weather's going through. We weren't even sure we were going to get rain, but hopefully it's filled up my water butts again because they were getting a bit empty. So that's pretty cool. And I don't have to water the garden. I should have done it this evening, but I didn't. And then Timber's arrived. Hi, Timber. So, no Timber's here. Thank you to my moderators. I've got Digger, I've got Timber, and I've got Norm. They do great jobs keeping you all in line. yeah, not that you get out of it really. You're very good. So hi Agent, hi Ravenson Express. Hopefully it'll be a good live stream. Polite. Yeah. Tamsin, it's been a pleasure to help out on the Kickstarter. Thank you, Tamsin. You're very generous with your time and picking things up like, oh, could you just netfab one more piece for me this evening, please? Because I want to load it onto my mini factory ready for tomorrow. I want it cleared off my desk, so all I have to do is turn everything public when it comes. But I'm kind of dreading other people finding issues. You know, it's just one of those things, isn't it? You just never quite sure when you've done things. Oh, it's all been test printed, but then you tweak it slightly sometimes, which is what I was doing today. Let's all hope it's perfect for everybody. I really want it to go well. Glenn Christodoulou, what project would you really like to do next? So I want to finish my Titanfall helmet. That's a cosplay helmet in 1:1 scale that I started 3 years ago. I'd like to finish the Titanfall mech. That was the very first thing practically I printed on my Piopoly Phenom that has been in pieces, and the resin hasn't got enough flex to put it together. So it all needs prepping because there's a few sort of layer shifts on it, and it's been sanded once, but it needs another fill and sand. And I want to do this amazing Tubui concept art of a sort of Titan hanging, being assembled, and the lighting's on it's beautiful. So it'd be in a shadow box with just a top light coming down and loads of hanging wires and things, and then the arms and legs which won't clip because there are ball joints that just don't work in the resin I've got. It's just never going to flex. That hopefully they would then, it would look good and I wouldn't need to plug them in, but I could hide them with loads of wires and stuff, the sort of ball joints. That's the theory. Yeah, that's the next one when I get some chance. But realistically, it's going to be Legion because I need to get another couple of things base for Legion. And it's going to be Shatterpoint because I need to get my army painted. I want to touch up Rex's crotch. Don't say that very often, do you? It's just a bit too OSL-y. It's a bit too light on some painting I did with some lava reflection. I want to touch those bases up. I wasn't very happy with them, which kind of came out in the video, I think. And then I also want to get on with my lava Kickstarter, which will be design of a morning and the evening and then sort of modelling of an afternoon that's going on to videos. But first project is cleaning my house. Yep, it's there. Hi, Go For It Painting, nice to have you. Alan and Sherilyn, hi from New Zealand. Hello. My 40-year-old Lego collection fills the garage to the roof. Car lives outside. Alan, I don't have a garage. I have a utility room and a 3D print room. And I have 3 printers in there at the moment because the 4th came out to get fixed and needs to go back in there, FDM, and 3 resin printers in there at the moment. Was it 4? 4 resin printers in them at the moment. So I now have 8 printers. I'm telling everyone 7, I have 8, but I don't use one of them because it's an old Mars. So yeah, it's yeah, it's full. So Nikki's just down the road in Cov. Yeah, it's probably why you're on the same time scale. I was really hoping I wasn't going to be loud crashes because my lights were flashing before the thunder came through. And you never really get that in the UK. The power grid around us is always really steady. So to have flashing lights is quite rare. It's really only thunder that does it. We don't have it that often. So I just was dreading the stream going down. So Adrian, yep, time is hard to find for hobbies. I'm glad I made it today. Well, I'm glad you're here. And technically, this sadly isn't even my hobby. This is now my job. So one of the problems when your hobby is your job is that when you're sat down at the weekend and you think, what should I do this afternoon as a break from my job? You think, oh, I'll do my hobby. Oh, it's my job. So I have personal projects, but then they never get done because basically all my modelling ends up on a video and then I regret not videoing them. So I just end up videoing my personal projects anyway. It's just the way everything goes. And by the time that's all happened, it's just like I may as well just model everything. I mean, I did do a bark speeder today and I didn't do that because I've already done a video on it once and I won't do another one. But yeah, so I'm playing Jedi Survivor at the moment as my hobby. And if you're not into video games, sorry, but I'm really enjoying Jedi Survivor. I'm only on the 2nd planet, so I'm not that far along. But it opens in Coruscant which is a big Star Wars city planet, and you spend a lot of time in the lower levels, the kind of Undercity. And I'd really like to do that as a Kickstarter soon as well. The Undercity or the lower levels or something, one of those names. Or loads of neon and, that kind of grungy, dark vibe. Rather than doing a cyberpunk city, I might do an Undercity. But hey, lava's first and then probably a spaceport. We'll see. So where have I got to? Yep. Hello, Jason. Hi, Jason. Oh, looking forward to seeing your sci-fi stuff out there. Jason does trains and sci-fi too, and he does an amazing, quite large compared to mine, scale sort of space empire. It's really cool. So, Chris, looking forward to watching. I'm really interested in this subject. Great channel, so thank you. Well, thank you. It's always good to know people actually like the channel. So yeah, that's always fun. So Andy, I love using 4020 nano LEDs using a Pickaxe microcontroller. Way less cost than an Arduino. Pickaxe comes in 08M2, 14M2, 20M2 and 40M2. Right, that's kind of passing me by. I haven't done Arduinos in ages, and I'll talk about that in a minute actually. That's kind of one of the points. So, Terraintronics. Ooh, LEDs. I love this stuff. Mark says, I end up throwing so much away test printing, but it has to be done. I think I've only test printed one item and it was okay. So I am test printing everything, but what I realise sometimes is if I have two variants, I only printed one variant because they're the same thing more or less. And sometimes there were issues on the second variant and I hadn't test printed it. So that made me go, oh, I really do need to test print everything. But one thing I am very mindful of, the next one needs to have fewer STLs in it, because this one has a lot of modularity, and this Kickstarter, and it's just been a nightmare because there's so many options, so many sides, so much to test print and put together. And then when I was trying to build renders to show it off, I realised there were options missing, so I entered more in. It ended up becoming a behemoth that I just couldn't cope with, keeping on top of, until the final piece got adjusted today, but I got it done on Friday. All the stretch goals and everything were done on Friday, and it's due out sort of sometime early next week. Whereas next time the stretch goals are going to be done from the beginning, so I'm not, obviously you might end up having a really popular one, you don't use all your stretch goals because you don't reach your funding targets, or you might do extra you don't need, but you can always put them on the shop afterwards, because I will have a My Mini Factory shop when this goes live, which is going to be fun. So, Mark, sitting out on my patio watching this, must have missed me in Northamptonshire. It was in west-east split and we were down the middle and we didn't know if we were going to get it. So maybe you're just too far east compared to us. So maybe. Hi Valleys 56XX, nice to see you. We've got Zuzuota. Hello, great to have you here. Valley, we've just done them. Jason, I can completely relate, Kathy. I'm not even quite sure what he's relating to, but he completely relates. That's always good. So, Timber, 50 in the house and only 17 likes. Come on, folks. So, guys, apparently liking is good for me and my channel. And there's 58 people here and 19 likes, so go like it. Just a little click. Andy T, my Ecto 1A has more than 74 202 LEDs, a motor and servo controlled by 4x14 M2 and 2x20 M2 processors. It was featured on the Airfix video of clubs at Scale Model World at Telford from 2022. I didn't go to that year, sadly, but it sounds cool. Sounds really cool. Jason and I are having a mutual admiration at the moment, so that's cool. Herman, hello there, Kathy. Greetings from Chile. Hi to Chile. That's probably one of the furthest away from us. It must be almost diagonally through. Maybe New Zealand's further. And we've got New Zealand in the house too. We haven't got Monique yet from Australia, so hi Monique if you make it later. We've got a few more people, like Secret Anorak, test prints, the bane of my life. I won't tell you how many test prints I ran at the beginning. And then Crix is a great print tester because he comes along and says, oh, what happens if you twist it around and do it like this? And I'm like, I never thought of doing that, so I haven't tested that it would work like that. And then Tamsin comes along and goes, I want to do a figure of 8. And I'm like, I haven't thought of doing that, so I haven't done that. It's where most of my stretch goals came from, Tamsin and Cricks going, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? Loads of great ideas. So this time they're on board from the beginning, so hopefully I'll get a bit more bounce back as I'm going along. And I will be putting it on the Discord. So if you haven't joined my Discord, you can. I'm sure one of my mods will remember to put the link in the chat because I didn't. And I'm trying to post more regularly. 90% of my posting at the moment is in a channel most people can't see called Print Testing. So Cricks and Tamsin see loads and loads of posts from me and hardly anybody else does. And so I'm trying to put more back into the main channels, especially as I come up and do lava. So do expect more to go on there. So Polite, I once had a model building mini job. In these 6 years, I was only able to build 1 or 2 models for myself. I had so many ideas for model diagrams, all had to be cancelled. I've got a lot of stuff that's going to be cancelled, realistically. And I'm going to have to get rid of for space reasons. It's a shame, but yeah. So Tamsin, ooh, that reminds me, I need to take pics of some of the most recent test print pieces. You do, you definitely do. Terraintronics, Andy, have you looked at using the Wemos D1 minis? Super cheap boards, can run with stuff and Arduino compatible. Have circuits and driving IR remote, RGB addressing. Okay, so we'll talk about all that in a minute. Alan and Sherilyn, I've used an Arduino and NeoPixel LEDs on my HO scale train module and Thunder and Lightning Cloud. Wow, Thunder and Lightning is a cool effect if done well. I've seen it done really well. So, oh wow, up to 37 likes. Woo, the shout out worked. Diggers, yeah. Tamsin happily accepts the blame for all the good ideas. That's cool. Hi Jim in Iowa, welcome along. LS, people press the like button, it's free, no taxes. Thanks LS. And Timber's put up my Discord link, so you can join that. So I'm going to put a video on in the background just because, hey, why not? Now, I didn't do any new content for this, so we're going to be talking about it. And I realise that over the years, oh gosh, do you know, I don't put, just a total side, I don't put myself on videos anymore because I always get really weird comments. Well, I get some weird comments. So it's interesting. Do you think it's better if I appear somewhere in the video? Do you prefer it if I'm there somewhere in the video? Or do you prefer it if I don't appear at all and it's just a disembodied voice? Yeah, let me know in the chat what you think. Because I just got fed up with some of the people on comments where they'll tell me I look beautiful. And I'm like, I want it to be about the modelling. I don't want you to pay me a compliment. I'm not doing this so you pay me a compliment. I'm doing this so that you appreciate my modelling. So anyway, there we go. I have no idea what it's actually doing. But anyway, I thought we'd get the hold of that rain video and apparently we've got like 10 seconds of it. So that'll be interesting. But this runs for about an hour, it says, so we might get the rest of it somewhere else. So I've picked 3 videos to go through and talk to you about, which have lighting in. But I also want to talk more generically first about lighting. So for me, oh, chat disconnected, funny. So for me, one of the things about lighting is that I think people overcomplicate it. I can read people in this chat talking about words. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what a 14M2 processor is. And actually, if you do and you love it, that is brilliant. If you really enjoy doing that kind of stuff, that's great. It's like a second hobby. And I love going down that rabbit hole every now and then. But for me, more and more, I like my lighting to be simple and an addition to the diorama rather than the point of the diorama itself. So let me explain that. This here is a T-Rex. It's a Jurassic Park diorama. And I decided to add lighting to enhance it. And I did 2 sets of lighting. I didn't do the T-Rex to be lit. It was kind of later on I added it, and that's probably why it doesn't work. And actually this fell apart in pieces during the building work because I hadn't secured the top on and it got moved and the top came adrift and a couple of things got pulled. The actual diorama is fine, but the lighting kind of fell apart, the sort of things. So I'm actually probably going to stick the 4 together and make them into something terrain tabletop and make it battery powered. But overall, I've realised, for me, the diorama or the modelling is where I want to spend my time, not the lighting. So I'm going to be talking about hacks and things like that. Easy ways of doing lighting without having to learn what a 14M2 is. So there we go. There's nothing wrong with doing a 14M2 or 20M2, I guess. But I guess most people here just aren't really going to understand it. So, who have we got in chat? Alan, John over at Tabletop Witchcraft did a super cool lightning effect around some mountains he made. That would be really cool. That would be good. Norm, it's always better to see the content provider. It's been proven it's better for the channel. Thanks, Norm. Yeah, I probably will sneak myself back in. Pat, I prefer you don't get any weird comments. It kind of comes with the territory. Someone said the other day, the irony of a super dry jacket, and I'm like, that's really funny because I don't actually know what you're being ironic about. Is it that I'm too old to wear it? Is it that it's, a sweatshop? I mean, all of my super dry jacket, sweatshirts are, I haven't bought one in about 8 years, so they're all old. So Aidan, yes please, always appear in your videos. It makes them a bit more personal. So definitely good. Stating the obvious, hide a mini Kathy in the model. Where's Kathy? Yeah, that's what Luke Tarrant does a lot, doesn't he, with Wally? Timber, my channel subs is pants because I never show myself. People like to see who the presenter is, but occasional appearance per vid will do. Do you say that, but I can think of some really top name people like Boylai Hobby Times. He went from nothing and is doing so well. I have no idea what he's on at the moment, but it wouldn't surprise me if we'd be on 1 million soon. And he never appears in his channel. And they even had a photo of him on Instagram meeting up with some fellow creators, and he's just got his fish in front of his face. It isn't a barrier to being big, being in your channel, I would say. I think for average channels it can make a difference, but Boylai's gone big and he never's appeared once in his channel. So there. Hi Ellie. Oh, Ellie. This will be Ellie who does gaming with me. Ellie has been brilliant at teaching me Legion and Shatterpoint, and we did a Shatterpoint demo. Well, Ellie did the demo and I stood there and it talked a lot because that's what I do, on Saturday at Battleground Gaming, and it was great because we ran 4 or 5 people through Shatterpoint, and I learnt a lot going through it again, and it was fun to watch people sort of picking up the new game. It's quite complex when you start, but actually there aren't that many keywords and it becomes quite easy after you've done 2 or 3 games, I think. And I'm really loving the minis. They're beautiful sculpts. I'm very excited. And Ellie does amazing painting. She painted all the store ones and they look amazing. So yeah, really cool. So hi Ellie. So Adrian, perverts with no respect for women or people in general, we should be glad to learn and share the hobby. Yeah, I don't get it as much as, people do it. It's not great, but I don't think it's, I had chat comments about people being smitten with lust so they couldn't watch the videos, but it's a rarity, so I mention them, and it's just a rarity, so it's quite fun to share them as amusing stories. It's not fun to receive them, but it isn't as common as perhaps it could be, so that's good. I mean, it shouldn't happen at all, but there we go. Stonehenge Mac. Kathy, how did you learn how to do lighting? I've had failed burned out LEDs, and we'll get on to lighting in a sec, but welcome to the channel. Mark, totally agree. I push the boundaries on lighting and sound on all my dioramas, but actual dioramas should take preference. Thanks, Mark, because you may have to interject and put some actual science into this. Traintronics, Stonehenge, I take it you tried driving it with more than a coin battery. Could be a problem. So Jason, I think seeing the creator is better because it's more personal, but definitely have yourself off it if it keeps away the creeps. Nothing keeps the creeps away. But what I find quite depressing is I put a photo of me up on Instagram and it will get way more likes than anything of my modelling. And you're like, is this just me going for a walk with my sister? Why does it get more likes than all my modelling? Just kind of frustrating when you're a modeller. Traintronics, also my work tends to be interactive dioramas for tabletop games like D&D. Oh, there's some cool stuff people do for that. Really cool stuff. Yeah, so Stonehenge says he tried it with a switch and a 9-volt battery. That automatically will probably blow your LED because most LEDs are about 2 to 3 volts. And we'll talk about that. So Andy T says, pickaxe chips like to 14M2 allow you to add timings, pulse width modulation to dim flash or lighthouse effects, car indicators, brake lights, etc. Sounds good. Stonehenge Mech says he was doing milli LEDs for street lights. So Timber says there's hope for his channel. Your channel's great, Timber, don't worry. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about lighting, as that's why we're all here. And it's an interesting one. So I have done Arduino lights. I have done quite fancy Arduino programs. And I have just done simple things. And I'm going to talk through the simple things, and we'll see how far we get through the simple ones before we get to the more complex ones like Arduino. Because Arduinos scare a lot of people. It's electronics rather than modelling. So it's another skill to learn. And it may be you don't want to learn how to do all of the wiring that's going on in the background here. It may be that you're just not interested in that as a hobby. So do not despair. 90% of my dioramas nowadays have the same 2 items at the core of them. First thing, tea lights. Do not knock the humble tea light. And I can thank Boylai Hobby Time for this because he puts them in everything. A tea light has a flicker LED. It comes with coin batteries, quite small ones, a switch, a flickering LED, and a kind of round circular thing. I want to do a lava geyser for my Kickstarter. I am considering making one of the stretch goals a flickering one that you can put a tea light inside. You take the candle bit off it, so there's just the LED sticking out the top, and then you have a battery operated geyser that you can just put on your tabletop. I have used them in here. All of these, I actually rewired them. All of the flickering lights that are on this Jurassic Park, they're the kind of gatehouses. They're flames. I used the flames that came with the tea light as the flame and painted them with some translucent orange Tamiya paint. And then I used the LEDs and I wired them into, we'll come to that in a minute, into a lighting power circuit. What's lovely about them is they're dirt cheap. You can buy 24 for like a few pounds, dollars, whatever your currency is, and they're self-contained. For the average person, you don't need to even learn to wire or do anything. You can just turn them on and you've got a flickering LED. Now, if you don't want it to flicker, you could up it a bit. They're very easy to solder and unsolder and swap out for a different LED. But before we get on to soldering, which I count in the let's get to complex later path, let's talk about the second type of LEDs that I always use. And those, well, actually there's 3 things I want to talk about. So the next thing I use is fairy lights. These are the lights that come on little thin copper wires, and they're point lights. You'll see when we get to the lava video for Tomb Raider, I use these as the lights in this. And what I like about those is, again, they're very cheap. You can get sets. Around Christmas, there's loads of Christmas lights, but they're always on Amazon all year. And what you can do is they come with a controller for flashing. So if you need a flashing effect or a pulsing effect or a river flowing effect, these LEDs will provide it. They're very hard to cut up though and resolder. I've tried it. I ended up getting rid of it because it just didn't work. So what they are good at is twisting around. The wire compacts down quite a bit and you can put quite a high density within something and use it to create an effect. They come often with a battery pack, or you can get them with a USB socket. USB sockets are the bee's knees for lighting because, well, a USB plug, because you can just plug it into all your standard stuff and, you know, it's got a cable hanging out the back of your diorama and good to go. You know, you can put a USB hub in and light 5 or 6 dioramas off it. They don't draw much power. LEDs do put heat out though, but they don't draw much power and you can just run it. And it's a very standard system. So actually I've standardized on either using LEDs with USBs attached or using soldering in my own sockets that are USB micro sockets. So let's go look at chat for a second. Ooh, Chat keeps disconnecting. I don't know if that's someone else getting stuff. So depending on how many volts LEDs, mine are just 3 volts, so am I. So it's definitely a thing about Stonehenge having problems. We'll talk about LED voltage and stuff in a minute. So Roger, that digger, I'll have to check. Yeah, it's always the biggest point. If they're blowing, it'll be, and I've blown some colours at 2.2 and I've blown them at 3 volt by mistake, by just putting the wrong thing on, thinking that they'd be fine because they were all the same, and they're not. Polite, unfortunately I have absolutely no idea about Arduino and such about programming. I don't ever use Arduino now because there's so much else out there that you can short circuit it if you're happy. Stonehenge, for Terraintronic says, Stonehenge Mac, I use and make Conway Castle LED drivers. You'll never need to burn out LEDs, promise. Okay, so he'll have a look at that. Andy, battery 18650, 5 volt reduced down to 3 volts with resistors. So Stonehenge is saying I like simple. Complex is too complex for my adult brain. I am 100% with you there. I'm trying to simplify out lighting. Tea lights, brilliant. Yep, Andy T, the clue's in your name. So Timber says, currently a pack of 3 available at Morrison's for £1. I'm presuming this is tea lights. You can get much cheaper than that if you buy bulk, if you like, buy 24 or 48. I think it was only £4 or £5 for 24. Terraintronics. Tea lights are a gateway drug. They really are. If you haven't used a tea light yet, go away and work out how you can put one in a diorama, because you can actually cut the outer bit off a bit and make it a bit smaller. And I often use that battery section as a battery pack. So I did a Samurai Droid. I did loads of fancy wiring with reed switches for actually turning it on and off, but the gubbins of the centre is still all just a tea light pack for the LED, for the batteries. Lucas, maybe the question is a little bit off topic, but what do you think about painted lighting? For example, Boylai Hobby Time did his Stone Arch diorama where he painted the light and shadows. I did OSL on my recent Shatterpoint minis. I'm not a huge fan of OSL, but I put the lava video in specifically, which is the next one, maybe, or the one after the next one, because it's got loads of painted light in it. And we'll look at that when we get there. I think it works in certain scenarios. I think it really works. But I think you have to be a really good... So if you put a light in, it will cast light and shadows in all the right places. If you're painting it, you almost really need to shine a light yourself to see where all that light is going to fall, because it's easy to put it in the wrong place and then it just looks slightly off. But, you know, people do amazing work in the miniature painting world with painting it. It's perfectly possible. Some of the glows that people have are just, you can't even tell it's a glow. It's just so subtly done. So it can work really well. It's not generally my style, but I'm pushing myself to try it because I've not done it before. So Terraintronics is saying, or pitching for his Conway LED. Apparently you can Google it after the stream, he says. Tamsin, around Halloween you get short strings of LED lights, just remove skull, pumpkins, whatever covers. It's another great idea. They're often on the same basis as these sort of little fairy lights on the copper wires. Really, really good. And as Tamsin says, they're from pound shops. I guess in some countries they might be called dollar shops or whatever you call them, but certainly the saver shops. And Christmas sales are another good time. Halloween sales. Don't buy them on the run up, buy them afterwards when they've gone cheap and they're trying to clear them out. Mark, every diorama I do runs on a 9-volt plug. If there are any different voltages in the lighting, I use buck converter, just keep it simple. My last couple of buck converters have burnt out, so I'm a little bit about them at the moment. Terraintronics, please, I'm not trying to mansplain or distract, but LEDs are not just a voltage thing. You have to limit the current through the LED. You do that easiest way with a resistor. Okay, that is a really good point, and we'll get there in a second, I think. So Stonehenge says, I attempted a cyberpunk diorama Nook book, looks like a dark recess without my lighting, and it looks, sorry. So Stonehenge attempted a cyberpunk diorama Nook book, and it looks like a dark recess without my lighting. I guess it looks like a cyberpunk power outage. Probably. I try not to ever show myself soldering because I always get comments about how badly I solder because I put the solder on. This is not soldering, by the way, this is for the fence wiring. I put my solder on the soldering iron and touch it to the wire. And apparently that's verboten, but hey, it's worked for me for all the years I've been doing it. So, Adrian, just buy small voltage regulators online. You can tailor the voltage to what you need. They only cost maybe $2 or $3 in bulk. MG, oof, I'm late. Nah, you're plenty. You've only missed a few minutes. Polite, too bad there are no ready-made circuits for my needs. It is a problem, and we'll look at those in a minute when we get to those. I keep saying in a minute, so let's get on. So the little LED lights on those coppers, if you get them on batteries, the chances are they're already set up for LEDs. You're not going to have any problems with them blowing your LEDs or anything like that if you were to use some of that circuit and put other stuff in. But personally, I would just use anything like this as a ready-made. You can sometimes cut the ends off to make them shorter. You can certainly do that with the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is LED strips. Now, I try and use LED strips now for 90% of my projects. They don't always fit. They're quite big. You can get skinny ones that are really much narrower. Oh, tea lights coming on. That's what you get with tea lights. Pretty cool, huh? They're 3 volt. The converter I put on them didn't have enough current draw for it and is kind of not very happy. And I'm going to put them to battery cases next because current on batteries is less of an issue. And then I'm using LED strip here. Now, what's nice about LED strip for all of you who are a bit nervous about doing things, it is simple soldering. If you want to solder, you can buy LED strip connectors. I would just say remember to do everything. There are arrows on the LED strips, so you want to make sure, or there's a direction for them. You want to make sure you wire everything in the same direction, or you can cause problems. But realistically, LED strips are brilliant. Why are they brilliant? Well, for my next lava terrain board, I want flowing lava, and I want to use RGB coloured LEDs. Now, for a lot of my stuff, I buy single colour LED strips, and you can buy them in 5 volt and 12 volt and more, 24 and higher. But 5 volt and 12 volt are the 2 main things that you'll be able to get power packs for. So if you want to get a power pack, you can get a 12 volt power pack and put a power pack into the wall, and you get one of those round sockets, and you can buy those sockets, I get mine on Amazon, as plugs, so you can put a plug on and then solder into the LED. But the real beauty of LED strips is most of them come at 5 volt nowadays with a USB on one end, and the last set I bought were a tenner for 5 meters, RGB, Bluetooth app controlling them, and a massive remote control with about 20 or 30 different options. One of those options is fire. That's actually on the app, not on the remote, but it's fire. And because it's fire, and my lava, it puts out in the orangey yellow flickering, and that's what I'm going to use for my lava. £10, 5 meters. You only get one of those controllers, so it could get expensive if you only wanted to use a little bit. But I'm doing a 3 foot by 3 foot board, so I'm definitely maybe even going to use 2 controllers because they work off the same remote because they're the same system. These are just blue LEDs. You can buy blue LEDs. You can buy white LEDs. So the blue colour is from the LEDs. And if you're wondering about the rain, it's a projector projecting rain onto there. So, Draintronics, coin cell batteries are limited in their current, a fault in their construction. That's why they're the battery of choice for LEDs. You're going to hard put to blow a coin battery to blow an LED if you've got the right voltage. You can still get the wrong voltage, but you're going to hard put to blow them. Stating the obvious, Big Clive has a YouTube channel where he shows teardowns of cheap LED gadgets. That's very true. If you've got an LED gadget and you're throwing it out, I look at LED torches sometimes and think, oh, that would be really good. I've got a massive flashing red one actually, and I always think when that breaks or the fluorescent tube bit breaks on it, I'll just get that flashing red bit and use it as a something somewhere. Yeah. Timber Surf says, bottom line is that unless you would buy 5 12-volt LED strips that have the resistor built in, each LED should have its own resistor size for that particular LED voltage with chosen supply voltage. Terrain, he's going to shut up now and let me carry on. I carry on anyway, don't worry. Yep, there's the tea light, Norm spotted it. So Stonehenge says, can you run them off a single on-off switch? I'm not sure whether you mean the tea lights. They won't work for many things because they are they're quite bulky. So they are a use case of a certain thing. But you can wire your LED switches. You need to understand the concept of parallel and series, and then you can wire them to one if you want. So Nick, where are we using LED strips for lighting? Entire model railways now? No, gosh no. I use LED strips for lighting all my buildings. So all of my buildings, you get 3 LED strips and you can cut a section. So I use LED strips, 5-volt ones generally, but some of them I've got them on 12 volts still. And I don't have to put it, if I'm using a 5-volt strip and I'm using USB power and I use a micro USB little socket, you can buy the sockets, you have to solder it yourself if you do this. And I put them in, I can put a strip of 3 into a building. And most buildings are big enough that you can get a strip of 3 on the ceiling. It makes it very, very easy to wire. But you do have to chain LED strips. They are meant to be chained. I've never actually wired them in parallel to know what the effect would be. If anyone has, I'm trying to think if I ever have actually. I always tend to do them in series, which is basically you daisy chain them one after the other, because that's how the strip is arranged. I don't know. I'm not sure whether you can wire them in parallel series, but let me just explain what I'm talking about there. So when you're wiring LEDs, or anything in wiring electronics, if you wire it so that you have your wire coming in, you have whatever it is, wire, whatever it is, wire, whatever it is, wire. That's series because they go one after the other. If on the other hand you have wire, whatever it is, wire, and then off this first wire it goes up, wire, whatever it is, and down and joins, so the two are next to each other, they're in parallel, like an equal sign, they run parallel to each other. And if you do it that way, they add and divide. You should go Google it before you try anything based off what I'm saying. But they add and divide the current available, the voltage available in one of the variable formula that you have for these things. And because of that, if you need to change the voltage that you have, one way you can do it is by choosing whether you do series or parallel. It's not always ideal, but it's one way. So Nick was saying, are we using LED strips for lighting entire models? A lot of my models that I'm doing here, as you saw on that Jurassic Park, I'm literally just lighting a section of it in different colours. So I had white over the T-Rex and blue over the background. I use them for buildings and I use them for lava a lot because I like my lava. And my next Kickstarter's got a whole translucent 3D print 3 foot by 3 foot lava board underneath it, and will have lava waterfalls when I get round to actually designing them. So where have we got to? Terraintronics, love the ink on the glue for the glow. Yeah, that worked really well. I think it was a fluorescent orange, and then probably, so it would have had Tamiya clear orange on there, and then maybe a fluorescent orange as well. So that looks really well. It does work well. So Andy, top tip, don't use coloured LEDs, use white LEDs with Tamiya clear paint. It makes the circuits much simpler. That is true. So I always buy coloured LEDs. And one of the problems is they are slightly different voltages. So let me tell you a little story. I made the lat that was at the very beginning of the trailer if you came on here early. And it's a Star Wars Legion scale spaceship, well, dropship. And I put in blue LEDs for the engines, and off a wire, and I made myself a little I used T-light batteries because I've got a few left over from the projects you've seen, And I made a little battery holder out of a bit of styrene to fit, because it was quite a weird shape and none of the battery holders I had worked. And so I had 3 of these batteries in, and I put it there. This is a tea light being used, the battery section, by the way, in here, to light other LEDs. And these are, they're actually filaments for light bulbs, but they sometimes call them noodle LEDs now. Mainstream LEDing has caught on to things that people have been doing sort of homebrew for a while. But they're long strip LEDs, and I'm just using the tea light as a power source for them to check what colour they look like, because they're in a packet without any colour on them. And this is what I'm using for this, are these long LEDs. So, where was I? Oh, lat. So I put the blue in, fine. Then I wired the red ones in. Blue LED stopped working. I'm like, oh, this is really complex. It's very hard to get into here, getting these batteries in and out. It's really hard. There's loads of wire going round and I'm shoving it up. It's really thin. It's not going very well. Unwired, rewired, unwired. I kept thinking, oh, my soldering must be off. No, they work. They check, you know, I put them on the resistance check. They're all not blown. What is it? Apparently, this is me being really thick, the blue LEDs have a different voltage to the red LEDs, and the red ones I think are lower. So when the red ones are in the circuit, electricity takes the path of least resistance. It's like water, it will just go on the least resistance. And the red ones had a lower voltage and it went that way. So it never went down the blue ones because it could go down the red ones. I ended up having to put in 3 battery cases into the one model because it's sort of floating, so I can't do it from the base. 3 battery cases in just to wire, because I had a set I couldn't reach with any other wiring, a red in the middle of the cabin and a blue on the engines that ran from the cabin. Huh. Took me ages to suss that. So, right, Terraintronics, whoa, the rain effect. Yeah, that was really cool. I need to do more experiments with the projection. I really want to, but I just, yeah, I've got it on the side. It's a really cool idea. I haven't explored it properly yet, but it's just a cheap projector off Amazon that I made a little rain video, just black and white, and projected it. So it's really cool. So Stonehenge, I think, has had all his questions answered. So we've got one happy customer. Lucas, what is the easiest way to make normal LED flicker? Unfortunately, tea lights are only in warm colours. Oh, you can get cool light tea lights as well. I've got some blue light ones, so they're not warm. So you can get them, or you could always paint them with a bit of blue over it, which will cool it down. But you can get cool LEDs that I think now the people use them for weddings, and they don't want their wedding to be warm, they want it to be cool, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, yep. Right, Nick's had a typo, he confused people. Terraintronics, Lucas, you'll need a programmable device to make regular LEDs flicker. Plenty of examples out there. You can buy flickering LEDs as well. You can just buy them loose. You know, the tea lights aren't the only time you'll ever get flickering LEDs. You can definitely get flashing ones. Instead of wiring a complex flasher in, I bought flashing LEDs. The only trouble is I find 2 stay in sync and the third one goes out of sync very quickly. But you can just buy flashing red LEDs if you want a flashing red light for the top of a tower or something, you know, like airplane warning. So you don't always need to put the electronics in. There's a lot of quite clever things. Now the downside with the flashing ones is they tend to be LEDs that are 3 or 5 millimeters, so they're bigger, chunkier things. And I remember back before little ones were available, I'm that old, that I remember cutting the tops off those 5mm ones and sanding them down so that they would fit into Optimus Prime over there, just to get them to fit. So it's not a given that you have to use small ones, but it is so much easier if you do. Timbersurf, Lucas, little known fact that if you wire a second LED different colour in series with tea light, they both will flicker. No, I didn't know that. So series, one, you know, where they're in line. You just need to think they may not both be as bright because you're cutting the amount of voltage going through them all. It's getting sort of pushed through more and more, so the water's not flowing as fast. Oh, some water analogy there. But yeah, that's really cool. So that's very interesting. Timber's the man, obviously, here. Timber, Terrain, and everybody else who knows what they're talking about. And I'm really trying to make this easier for people who don't want to go the full whole hog of buying a soldering iron and learning to solder. Timber, you can of course also buy flickering LEDs in various colours, but works out more expensive than tea lights unless you buy in bulk. So you can get your tea light and take the white, clear, even tea light and paint it a colour. And that's what I would do if I wanted a coloured tea light. I would put on 2 or 3 layers of Tamiya, translucent red, orange, green, blue, yellow, whatever colour it was, until I got the colour I wanted. So Tamsin says, I really should think of how to integrate LEDs for my peach trees project. So for those of you who don't know what peach trees is, it's Judge Dredd, the block that he goes up. I think you could do a number of things there. One, you could have a broken light flashing in one of the rooms. You know, it's quite a trope, but it's like I'm run down, so even the lights haven't been fixed. So you can get a flickering light in there. You can have blue lights that flicker slightly that people use for TV, in case people are watching TV or holo vids or whatever they are in the future. You can use neon. You can get little neon signs. I have some Miller Engineering, the HO, but say things like hotel and stuff. But you can get exit and things as well. So yeah, you can get a lot of stuff that would look really cool. So did I see the Adam Savage AT Walker diorama? I've started it and I haven't finished. I'm still on the first one. I didn't know he used one of those LEDs, but to be honest, the person who I first ever saw use those was Boylai Hobby Time. And if ever you want to see some really cool use of those long LEDs, go look at Boylai's channels. He has probably 8, 9, 10 dioramas that will blow your mind using long LEDs for blaster fire. One of the first ones he ever did was a stormtrooper blasting someone down a corridor. He uses them for flames coming out of a dragon. He uses one of the noodle ones that is flexible rather than a straight one, and he uses that. I've used the flexible one. We'll see it in a video in a minute, I think. You know, they're so versatile, and I think he's the king of them. So I would suspect Adam Savage got them from him, but hey, you never know. So yeah. So Timber says bright electronics components do them. I don't really know bright electronics. Those are rigid flexi LEDs, right? Those ones are called filament LEDs from AliExpress. Silicon LEDs, people call them, and they also get called noodle LEDs, and yeah. But I have got flexible ones that you can get up to like a foot long flexible LEDs, and I use them in the flipper one that's coming up, which is when we'll talk about LEDs, small ones. Digger says yes, they look like a tiny fluorescent light. You can get fluorescent lights, but these ones come in red, yellow, orange, green, white, blue, so you can get them in all sorts of colours as well. Terrain tonics, that red versus blue can be solved using resistors per LED. Yeah, you know why I didn't use resistors? I bought 1,000 resistors and they're all in one big box, not in order. And when I want to find one the right size, I then spend an hour going down the rabbit hole of trying to find the right resistor, the exact right resistor for whatever I want. So it was quicker to do a battery box. I hate to say it. But yeah, I should have done resistors. Ravenson Express says, you want blinking lights, you only need an NA555, some resistors and capacitors, no microcontroller mode necessary. If you want flashing lights, blinking lights, if you just want the LED, you can buy flashing LEDs. You can just buy flashing LEDs. And as Andy's saying, one flashing LED a hidden one will flash everything else. So you could put in one of these 5mm ones or 3mm ones that you can buy quite availably loads of places, a red one, and then you could put any LED you want in and it will flash them. And I didn't know that, so I am so excited that I can do that in future, because yeah, that'll be really cool. Pat, I know there are micro LEDs, but is there such thing as a micro battery? What size are the smallest batteries? So my ones in the tea light are about that big, and you can get smaller, but actually there comes a point where the smaller the battery, the less time it will run for. So sometimes it's better to go with a bigger battery. So where I have the choice of the tea light, I can run an LED off one of them because they're put in series. So all they're doing is sort of building their charge up, then they're sort of making them last longer. I can, if I put 3 in, they'll last longer than if I have 1 in. It's as simple as that. So sometimes you're better having, but there are plenty of small ones. If you go and look at any of your like car fobs or anything that is a miniature little rechargeable batteries in your Apple Watch, whatever it is, there's so many miniature batteries out there if you go and look. Probably just need to Google the right ones. I use a lot of CR2032 because I had a batch over. They're quite big, but they're quite flat. You can get them to fit whatever the space that you wanted. Sometimes a big flat one's better than a small squatter one. So Digger says Miller Engineering makes some incredible LED signs. The ones I've got aren't LED, they're EL. They're electric-luminescent, but they're really bright. But they do loads and loads of very brilliant. I was pointing them out to someone for tabletop games only a couple of days ago. The US based, so they can be difficult to get over here. But you know, they're still really, really good. If you're doing a cyberpunk city, they might have something you can use. And although people might go, oh, they're HO, it doesn't matter. There might be O, because hotel signs are often scaleless. You know, they're just a sign. David Orff, Petrie's you could have glowing holes post some crazy woman shooting a rotary cannon through the apartment walls. Now that would be interesting. Glowing holes. Yeah. Don't know. You'd have to kind of make the whole wall glow and paint everything black apart from the holes. That'd be really cool. Andy T, I know, but I meant the smallest ready flashing LEDs. I think they're 3mm, the smallest red flashing LEDs I could find when I was looking. So Pat, right, David, I'm not planning to do a level 76. Modelling the shot of apartments is beyond my skills. No, Tamsin, you can do the level you're on now, and then when you've got those skills down, you can go up a level and do the next level. You'll be fine. But shot up is hard. So John says, I'm using a 16 by 16 RGBIC LED matrix above my diorama to work as a miniature lighting grid because I want some elaborate scene changes and moving effects, but the Arduino programming is no small task. I've done some Arduino programming of quite complex sunrise and sunset for Port de Norwich, and when it came to it, I just put in a white LED strip. I just decided that I wasn't going to do that whole caboodle. I just didn't go there. I also took the servo motors out and went with manual point controls because I wanted it to be really simple. And actually, I've sold that now to someone else and they're fiddling with it. And it suits them great. I don't think there's too much electronics in it. So, yeah. So these are the LEDs in clear plastic straws with a little bit of glue blocked on top and some bright orange fluorescent paint as well, so it looks good when the lights are off. And one of the problems with LED stuff is it has to look good when the lights are off. So I do recommend orange fluorescent paint, yellow fluorescent paint, some of these, if you want something that looks lit when it's not lit as well. You can do a little bit of OSL, object source lighting, you know, spray around the lights to make it look like they're on even when they're not on. So yeah, so this was a Stinger. It's a Second Dynasty ship. There's a very similar one coming out on their Kickstarter. I must mention actually, it comes out 14th of June, so that's this Wednesday, and yeah, it's going to be really good. Operation Maelstrom it's called. They have loads of little ships that will fit into sci-fi dioramas. They're 28mm FDM prints, really cool. Now this is on because it's probably one of my most ambitious LED projects that I've done, and it has an Arduino in it. It also has 16-volt motors for the flipper, which is really annoying, and it also has LED strips in it because, like, why not? Why not do LED strips? But I stopped short at doing the matrix arrays in the end because they just got too complex. So yeah, Timber said they're not LEDs, they're high voltage electroluminescents. They're brighter. I bought some EL, and you actually saw it in the last video. I bought some EL sort of wire. I went with the noodle LEDs, or whatever we're calling them nowadays, just because you could hardly see that electroluminescent strip. It just wasn't bright enough. In daylight, it just doesn't show. I think it might work on a nighttime scene, so I might dig it back out again when I'm doing, say, that Titanfall shadow box project, but not at the moment. So Digger says that there's one company here that does a few of them, but not as much variety. I'm guessing he's talking about Miller. It is hard to get really good ones nowadays. Mark, I get all my electronics from Bright Components, and they do pre-wired, pre-registered LEDs, flickering, flashing and standard. And then Polite says there are flashing LEDs type 0805, but they only have a simple single flash. Okay, so let's talk LEDs then, because we're on this video. I said nowadays I rarely go to this kind of length for a diorama, but this is a fun fair and it needed LEDs. And I would do it differently now if I was doing it again on some sections. And there's two elements to this. There's a 16-volt motor driving, many elements to this. There's a 16-volt motor driving the actual flipper. There's also, I put on a lit up flipper sign. Now there's a brilliant site called Fantasyland. There's a few extra vowels than you might expect in the fantasy bit. I think there's an I in fantasy. The second A is followed by an I, and he does kits and stuff for, he's French, kits and stuff for all of these Fala kits. And Fala kits go out of production, so you might, have a kit and then it just doesn't, isn't available anymore when you see it on his website. But I decided I was going to do the flipper, and I looked at doing matrix arrays, but the amount of soldering you need to do to solder so many LEDs in place just defeated me. So I always buy, as Polite just said, I always buy all of my LEDs pre-soldered. Now what I find is 0402s are slightly bigger, 0602s and 0805s that Polite's using, they're so small, the wires just come off so easily, the 06 and the 08s. But go for it, have fun, but I stick to 0402 if I can, but just because they're more robust. I've got 0602s that have come apart during the process. So I really suggest that 402s, 405s, I'm losing my brain here, 402s are the best to go with rather than trying to go smaller. And if you go smaller, the pre-wire, A, you can't even see them to wire them up. And B, you really will struggle with the wires coming off, the pre-soldered ones, is my experience. Now, other people use them because they want them for car headlights and some of those really small things. I'm generally not lighting at that detail. I'm generally doing diorama lighting. So for street lights and things like that, you can easily get away with the slightly bigger ones. So go for those because they just make better, just more robust. And I have got that right. Someone write to me in chat and tell me I've got that right way around, that the 0402s are bigger than the 0605s, because I'd hate to be telling everyone the wrong way around. And I'm just having a moment where I go, oh, no, did I get that right? But this, I decided I didn't want to solder all of those little ones. So what I decided to do instead was to use LED strips. Now, it kind of worked in most places. I did a little bit of a short circuit. You can see it on this flipper sign. That flipper sign may look like individual LEDs, but it's actually a 3D print with loads of dots on it. Clear 3D print, loads of dots. Modelled a bit like this, that's loads of dots. You can see the light shining through. And I painted them and then just sanded the paint off on the lights. And you put light behind it and it shines through. You can see the 3D prints here. Paint black everywhere you don't want light to be, and then, or in this case I painted it yellow, but actually painting it black would have been better, and then painting it yellow. And then what you can do is you can just sand off or wipe it off, as I'm doing here with my thumb, the paint off the top of the sort of bulb, let's call it the bulb area. And it's a bit of a cheat. It isn't going to look amazingly as good as doing them all as individual LEDs, but actually in scale I think this is a really good way of looking like an arrayed LED effect. And then you just have to light all the way behind. Now for this I wish I'd given a bit more clearance, but I was rather constrained by the flipper size, and I was using the existing flipper size as the sort of key for it. I decided to use one of the flexible silicon LED strips. I tried these did not work. You'll see that I went through all of this a lot trying to get the coloured ones to work, but you know, because nothing on a strip is big enough, small enough. So I went with this. It looks really good. I cut it apart, I soldered it. It just, I don't know, it just didn't seem to really happen. So I went down a real rabbit hole here, trying to get the LEDs closer together so they were in a strip, so they were usable and still flashing, and I could still use the controller that came with it. Whatever you're going to do, you're going to have to wire them all close to each other. But at the end of the day, it just didn't quite float my boat. So I ended up going with the noodle one. Now, a little word on LEDs and wiring and powering it. I tend to test with, these are two 1.2 volt, because they're rechargeable, just batteries, just normal AA batteries. I use them a lot just for testing. It's good to get one of those little battery things and you can test. They're not going to blow the majority of your, that's 1.2 volts times 2, because they're, are they in series so they're building up? Yeah, they must be in series so they're building up. You know, you're not going to blow any LEDs with them, and it's useful to test your LEDs are working during the process. So test regularly your LEDs still working and that you haven't inadvertently burnt it out somehow, because if you are a little bit heavy with your soldering, you can burn LEDs out. Soldering is a skill. People are always telling me that I'm not that good at it. But what you need is very little solder, a light touch and a fine tip. The hotter the soldering iron, the less time you have to solder it for. But what I'm doing here is soldering just, I don't even know what that is. Presumably it's the converter. Maybe. I had different problems here with, the problem with this diorama is it's got 3 or 4 different feeds in it. It's got the 16 volt, it's got this LED, and it's got the LED strips, which I feel were probably 12 volt or 5 volt. This LED needs 3 volts. And I used various converters to, rather than resistors, to drop down all the voltages to the right levels for things. I find I prefer a buck converter to a resistor. What I know is that almost all of my micro USB sockets that I've standardized on come in at 5 volt. So I have to convert them all down. Now, one cheat I did, I didn't want to light this. People do, but sometimes LEDs are just such a pain to get into places. Putting an LED in this that isn't attached is moving. So it would need to have some kind of split ring pin. Oh no. So these are fluorescent pens. The blue aren't that great, but they're fluorescent pens. I put the colour to show that it's a coloured light bulb. And then if you put a blue light on it, you may well have a UV LED flashlight if you're a 3D printer for curing stuff. But you can buy UV strip. I've used it to make curing chambers. But if you put that torch on it, it lights up like it's lit up. So if you were doing this as a diorama, you can actually just buy a normal incandescent blacklight bulb as well. You can put blacklight into your room and it will start to look lit up without any work. So Tamsin, on your peach trees, if you don't want to have to do neon lighting, you could use fluorescent pens and put a UV light in there from a torch or from a LED you can buy or from a strip or whatever it is. But you could do that instead, and then you can get a really good neon effect rather than having to go and get some kind of lighting that's quite small and fine and becomes overly hard to kind of just get in scale. Now, what I didn't like about those was I should have painted everything black first because the light bleeds through quite badly. And these LED strips, sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. The flipper was fine, but on those stands, that one's working at the moment. And then you'll see in other cuts that I've got of it, it just stopped working. And they randomly stopped working. So I would probably change the way I did those upright ones, discs, somehow in future. I may even just put a single coloured flashing LED in there or something. But that is an Arduino driving that flipper lighting. And so it lights it back and forth. It's an RGB strip. RGB strips have an information line that goes through. So you can put a colour onto it. You just need either NeoPixel library or an Adafruit library or something like that. There's libraries on the Arduino you can add in that will fire your RGB LEDs, and you can do various different rainbow chases, etc., etc. Or you can pay somewhere cheaper than a tenner probably and buy an LED strip with those already programmed in, and you could cut them up and put them in here and use them cut up. You can see the ones on the flashing panels are just LED strip cut up. And if I painted them black, it would have worked better. You can just put that LED strip on and you don't need to learn to program anything. So if you love Arduinos and you want that challenge, do it. If you don't want to do Arduinos, and the spaghetti wiring on this is horrendous underneath, it's so bad. It's just so much wiring to wire all this. If you don't want to go to that, just buy an LED which has rainbow chase, long flash, slow flash, all the colours you could want in the rainbow, and it will do all of this for you just like that. And all you have to do is turn it on and press some buttons on a remote. So definitely think about going that route if you don't want to do electronics. You will, if you're going to split it across something complex like this, need to learn to solder the bits of strip together, and you can't go smaller than 3 LEDs, or obviously 2 on this one that I got on the strip, but it is one of the easiest ways. Now this is my lava one, and it has 2 things I really wanted to bring out. It has painted light, and it has just basically really simple lighting underneath, which we'll see as we go through. I also did a whole opening video with loads of different lavas painted with different amounts of OSL on them, and I really like the way this lava lights. So I'm hoping to capture that for tabletop gaming because I thought this was really cool. So what have we got here? Mark, that is a very good idea, re the printed parts. We'll have to try that. It works really well for the very fine ones on fairgrounds. You know, sometimes I think we overcomplicate things. I think we really do. And I was just like so desperate by the end of this. In an aside, I wish Ian Lovecraft did these for sale because he's got some that were kickstarted that you can't buy now in this lot. And I really would love to have more of this set. There was a tiger mouth tomb, which I really wanted, and you just can't get hold of it still. So this is Tomb Raider. Another one of my great loves of gaming. Really do enjoy Tomb Raider, and she always has lava tombs. I mean, she never burns to a crisp. And I did this for, I think this was a My Mini Factory sponsored one, to be honest. because these are my manufactured prints. I did them in resin, those two big prints you can see me testing here. I designed it all, did it in resin, and the resin ran out towards the top of the pyramid. So I ended up having to reslice and just print the top and then do a lot of sanding to get them to go together. So RGB LEDs under the soldering iron, thus 3 wires, yes. So Tim, hi Tim, I was just saying Tim's the new owner of Port de Norwich, so he will tell you all about it. He's doing amazing things with it already. So there we go, very cool to go to such a good home. That's the top of the missing, yeah. Great. So Ben is showing loads of throwing up icons for showing the flipper. So this is me sort of playing around with lava texture. I do a lot of playing around with colouring of lava. I'm actually painting lava this week, so this is good to rewatch this. Polite, this is quite a nice method. I've used cinema LED modules in a 1:43 FedSig Phoenix light bar, transparent blocks with 1 LED inside and 6 transparent spots on the front and back. Yeah, the tip I got wrong was do spray it black first, and then, you know, get mask or sand off your clear areas, but do spray it black first rather than definitely rather than doing pale yellow, which is what I did. So cosmic scale models, I try to use SMDs now. Yeah, they're pretty cool. So this is, you can see, it's a little frenetic. This is a basic, simple fairy light box. And you can see there's about 8 or 10 options. And I took it apart because I wanted to USB light it rather than battery it, because that's just my standard, is rather than having loads of batteries spread around through dioramas slowly going off. Instead, this is quite a simple one. I just used that remote and did the flashing. It's simple because it's only one colour, it's white. But I've wired it in. There's a sort of the gubbins, that's a technical term, for the actual lighting that came with it that I put there. And then I've wired in, instead of using the batteries, I wired in a equivalent, because it's 3, USB. There we go, just they're put in there, it's in a picture frame, clear cover. Now, one very important thing is spots of LEDs look like spots of LEDs. This is plate packing material. I bought a ton of it, and it's diffusing. You can buy diffuse foam and stuff like this, but actually this plate packing material works almost as well. It gives you a really nice diffuse effect that just makes a difference. You really want your LEDs to look smooth. So hi Cosmic. So Phoenix Police light bar, yeah, I got that polite. So Tamsin says, I think for peach trees it'll be more lighting along the corridors and balconies, maybe some in the apartments and shops. I was thinking a neon sign on a shop or something could literally just be a fluorescent with maybe a black light LED shining on it. You know, simple as that. Poor lawn. Port de Norwich is getting, oh, this is Tim's update. Port de Norwich is getting some tweaks. There is now a continuous circuit connecting both sides of the front narrow gauge tracks, going to fit shuttle units for the other 2. So Tim wants to display it eventually. So he's put round the outside of it, he's put an extra loop for the front track so he can have it on a continuous run, just going round and round. So I am doing light here with paint. Now this is really, really exciting. And what I did was I spray painted from above, because there's some light from above, with white, and I did it from the front. It's called a zenithal highlight. Miniature painters do it a lot. And I put on some fluorescent orange. I just bought some fluorescent orange paints. I've used them a lot, and I'm not quite sure why I've got the sealer out, but there we go, I sealed it. But what I realised was actually all the light needs to come from underneath. So I did a bit from above, and then I did the lava from underneath. So you can see I'm spraying up as if the light is coming from the lava. And then I'm putting the orange on. And this is capturing the direction that the light would glow. And what it's allowing is when the lights aren't on, because I don't leave the lights on my dioramas, it allows it to still look like lava when it's not lit up. And that's especially good if your batteries run out on a tabletop game or something like that. So basically every single thing in this diorama has a spray of orange fluorescent paint. But what I found, you can see here, I'm actually in the way of it. I'm actually spraying an orange as well as the fluorescent. I find the fluorescents, maybe they're just not mixed well, I should shake them more. I don't find they spray particularly solid. So if you want to build up a more brighter colour rather than just a fluorescent colour, I do find it pays to spray the colour of the fluorescent first. Now I can't do that with my lava that I'm doing now because it needs to be translucent for the light to come through it. Whereas this, I'm spraying the solid columns. So it's just going to be the orange. It'll be intriguing to see whether it gets orangey enough. Timber, when they spray paint lawns in Florida, they usually use green. Yes, I airbrushed. Secret, yeah. So airbrushing is really good for getting light to bounce around because it's easier to control. You just spray from the direction you want, and the spray will go in the direction that the light would also go. So I'm building up this transparent warbler, which is the clear thing I bent with some heat. And then these are just granular gels and sort of the artist gels. I suspect they cost a fortune nowadays, but I got them very cheap when I got them. And I used them to build up the lava effect around the waterfalls. Now, there will be lava waterfalls in my new Kickstarter, but they'll be 3D printed in translucent filament, which is really cool. So this is just those same flashing LEDs, and they're going underneath, and they're just adding a little bit of light to it to provide just a bit of life to the lava. Digger says, my wheelie bin lids have a lot of overspray on them. My wheelie bin lids are all the wrong colour now because they've all been sprayed so much. So you can see here that I'm spraying the lava. It's the easiest way, and actually this gel wasn't quite set. So it just enabled me to spray. And I use several colours to build up lava. And what I want is for it to look light when it's not lit, as I said. And I used I tried different colours, and I found that I ended up going, I used browns, and I tried doing it with reds, and it just looked wrong. And I thought lava darkened to red, but actually you're kind of better off doing it with more of a brown than a red, was what I found. But there we go. And then you want to dry brush everything with black for where it's really cooled and you've got that kind of metallic sheen almost on it, where it's just drying off, very much like the sort of lava flows that you see. Tim, to Timber, if it hadn't rained today, they would have had to spray paint the Welsh Mountains green. Oh, I know, all the grass around us is gone brown. Mine's in shade mostly, so it's not too bad. And the important thing when you're spraying light is that you do copy the colours and get it right. And then you can see I was really struggling getting the colourways on my lava, so that's a joy for tomorrow. And the thing I will say is, just whenever you're doing anything that needs light, go look at a picture of it and check that it actually looks like what you expect it to look like. You know, it's an interesting one. And you can see here that I'm kind of doing light around the edges, dry brushing, just building up that colour. So lava is an interesting one because it is lit, and so you've got to capture that light on it. And you can see here I went over very much with fluorescent because I didn't feel that this whole chamber was really light enough without the lights on. And this is just loads and loads of fluorescent paint drilled on. Now, I don't actually like this with fluorescent UV light, and the reason for that is UV light is very blue and I want this to look orange. But it's certainly a something you could do. I kind of wish UV light wasn't blue, but then it wouldn't be UV, would it? I said I'd standardise my USBs. I haven't really talked about resistors, and everyone's talked a lot about resistors. I try to buy and match my power to my LEDs. So I try and use a 3-volt converter to convert everything to 3 volts, and I try and use a 5-volt if I'm doing 5-volt for LED strips. I'm not really a huge fan of having to put loads of resistors everywhere. And this is just mean it wasn't light enough, so I added in extra LEDs. So all of this is just adding a whole set more LEDs in so it was brighter. Sometimes you just need to really put a lot of LEDs in, but the waterfalls weren't really lit up that much. And you can choose to have continuous, but what I find with some of these strips, when you put continuous on, a lot of the time they don't light every light because they're predicated on not all of them being lit at once. That's just kind of how they manage to get so many on there, the strips. So we've looked at tea lights, we've looked at fairy lights, we've looked at LED strips, and we've looked at adding in individual LEDs. You can do them with Arduinos, and we've mentioned that. Personally, I would never go that way if I could avoid it. I have done it. But when I'm coming to my next project, which is lava, I've already bought the LED strips because I don't need it to be particularly... I want a really fancy flash, but I don't need it to be particularly small because it's going underneath. And the next thing I kind of need to do on it is work out how to do the waterfalls to make the water flow. And they do sort of chase yellows and chase reds I might be able to use. And I need to work out how to do the geysers, and that will be tea lights. And that's my latest project, really simply done with just 5-volt LEDs. It's simpler. So Tim says, I go 3-volt for everything I can as well, much better. So the question, Tim, what do you use to power your 3-volt? So USBs are 5-volt, and if you run those onto your 3-volt batteries, you will blow them. So if you're going to use USBs, then the easiest thing to use for me is a buck converter that takes the 5-volt to 3-volt, just because then. But what I've found is where I've had too many LEDs, it just gets too hot. So I actually bought myself a 3-volt supply. You can buy a 3-volt wall supply. And I bought myself a 3-volt wall supply, which I can put a micro USB on. The trouble is my micro USBs can also be 5-volt. So then I have to remember which of my projects are 3-volt and which of them are 5-volt. And the truth is, if it's got LED strips in, they may need to be at 5-volt. But most LEDs will light well below the light, the voltage they need to be fully lit. So you can get quite a lot of light out sometimes on sort of LEDs. If you're putting them at sort of 1.5 to 2 volts, you may get some light even. I often run them slightly under to try and extend the life a bit. I don't know if that works, but I do. Or just because it's easier to do the wiring that way. So this is Lara. She's gone into the temple. She looked at the icon, and sadly she had to run out because it's shaking. Yeah, and it all comes down, and that's it. That's the end of the tomb. We'll never see it again. So there we go, and you can see it's not, I don't know if it's lit there or not, I don't think it is. You can see how bright and lit it looks even without any lights on. And for something that's lit, it's something you need to consider is, do you want it to look lit when it's got no power on? For a model railway, no, you don't really, you don't want to do that. But for a diorama, it may well be that just adding some light effects in your paint will make it look more realistic when you've not got the lighting on. But there we go. That is lighting that I do in a nutshell. Now, I have done loads of Arduino and little LED stuff in the past. It's okay, personally. I wouldn't rush to go there again, but that's just me. I would rather buy a controller ready-made and just use that. Anyway, so there we go. Norm says that's such a magnificent diorama. Thanks, Norm. I was actually really pleased how that one came out, and I'm rarely pleased with dioramas. I do like most of my Tomb Raider ones, to be honest. Andy T says, Lara Temple, great work. Thank you. Yeah, and that was one where I think it looks like it's got really complex lighting effects in some ways. I was thinking about putting tea lights on the way in there are urns, and I was going to put tea lights in them and just have the batteries. But actually there wasn't a lot of space, and I just, in the end, didn't, because there wasn't really a huge amount of space. Now I could have probably done them if I'd hollowed the urns differently, and they were bought STL and I didn't hollow them out more. But you know, you could simply have put flaming lights on the front as well, which I think would have been really effective. So Tim says, I use DC to DC high efficiency voltage regulators. I have a single 12 volt supply that runs layout controllers to the regulator and takes that down to 3 volt. Don't ask me how they work, not overloaded yet. So Andy T says, use the KISS principle. Well done, thanks. Yeah, so that is my top tip with lighting, really. If you can buy it off the shelf, you'll be surprised how much you can buy off the shelf, then it probably will be easier to do if lighting's not your thing. If you love Arduinos and you love all that kind of stuff, go do it. I see some amazing things, and I follow some people. One guy's done little TFT screens, you know, the little screens. He's got bus stops with working adverts in HO scale, and all of the bus arrival and departure information on top electronic as well. You can buy some of those things. They're not necessarily cheap, but you can buy them to add 1 or 2 things to a small diorama or the front of a layout. Personally, wouldn't use them too far back because they won't get seen and it's bang for your buck. But they can be a real talking point. I don't know if you can buy the TFT screens, but you can buy the bus and train destination ones, definitely, because someone on the Great Model Railway Challenge had them. So yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. So Perlite says, with plug-in power supplies, you have to be careful they are stabilised, otherwise they'll give off significantly more voltage. That is actually one of the issues, and it's worth mentioning. When you turn on a power point plug, socket in the wall type of power, there's often a surge, and it can be more than your LEDs. So you could technically blow all your LEDs. So a lot of people put either a capacitor or which is just a fancy soak of voltage at the beginning. So when I'm doing my Arduino circuits and I'm doing them, I'd often put a capacitor or a resistor or something in there to just cut that down at the start so that you're not going to blow anything. LEDs are, some of them are flaky, some of them are surprisingly resistant. You just have to decide really whether you want to chance it. But if you've got batteries, you won't have that problem. And I don't know that USBs have that problem particularly. And so it's probably one of the reasons I standardised on USBs, because they're already coming out of quite a well-regulated power supply generally. And you can buy powered USB hubs. So you can buy a powered USB hub that will do 4 or 5 dioramas. I've actually got on with about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got a 10 slot. It's actually got computer stuff on, but I've got a 10 slot powered hub. LEDs don't necessarily. So the thing I find with LEDs that I always underestimate, it's not about voltage, it's about current draw. So if each LED draws 50 milliamps, quite a lot of the power packs that you get only have 400 or 500 milliamps or something. They're not an amp, they're actually really small. You have to really look carefully for power packs that are the right amperage. And you know, if you're getting it for a layout, quite often you'll get 5 amp or 10 amp. But if you're getting this LED and you've got 10 LEDs in there and you've got a 500 milliamp power supply, you've used all of the amps coming in on your power supply. You put more and more LED on there and you're making it work really hard, and there's a danger it overheats. And I got caught out with that on my Jurassic Park one because I put in this 5 volt to 3 volt converter. I didn't check the current on it, and it just got so hot. Now I left that converter wired in and just put in a 3 volt power supply, solved the problem because it actually had nothing to convert, so it didn't seem to mind, and it just stayed in the circuit. But for only 1 or 2 LEDs, those little buck converters, they sometimes get called, really useful. 5 to 3 is not uncommon because a lot of LEDs need to go from 5 volt USB down to 3 volt LED. So Monsville, good morning, Monique. I did say hello earlier and say, oh, she'll catch you back later in Australia. OLED screens. So there's a couple of things here that, let's go fancy lighting effects. I saw somebody do a Pepper's Ghost with their iPhone, and Pepper's Ghost is a magic trick. So you can use your iPhone, an old one, or just you can put a little stand for it and slot it in. And people do that for drive-in movie theatres. They put, you know, a tablet perhaps, but an old, oh, that went really blippy. That's probably the thunder somewhere. They put an old, screen in, and it's like a drive-in movie theatre. Or they put in something like so Pepper's Ghost, I'm trying to explain this and I'm not going to succeed. So if you don't want to look at it directly, you don't want it as bright as the screen, you can put your phone here and your glass, shiny glass, at sort of 45 degrees, so it reflects it back out at the person. So it kind of comes off the phone, goes into this glass that is acting as a mirror and comes back out, but the glass is see-through, so you can see the rest of the diorama before it. It's very useful if you want to do hologram effects or if you want to do ghost effects. So if you're doing either of those, and if you're going to do it for that, you may not need it for the whole time, so you can just pop your phone into a little black shuttered section with the right video. Nerdforge did it for lights, and they actually put LED like tea lights in or something like that, and they put in front of them on this Pepper's Ghost actual flames. They look so cool because not only have you got the lit LED element to it, you've got a flame like projection over the front of it. Now it's a very limited viewing angle, and obviously if you look anywhere other than the viewing angle it's going to start to drift off, but it's a really cool effect. The other thing that I've always wanted to try and never have is an infinity mirror, which is, it's basically you put LEDs round, you have a one-way mirror at the front and then a two-way mirror behind. Oh, yeah. You have a two-way mirror at the front, so it goes through, you can see through it, but the light also bounces off the back, and then you have a proper mirror behind it. So you look through the mirror and you can see whatever's in that segment before the mirror. So you've got your mirror here and your mirror here and a segment in between. You see that repeated ad infinitum into the hillside. I know, was it Gory and Defeated, John Allen had a car dealership that seemed to go into the hillside with this. Now the article that I read that in was black and white, so this has not been a recent development. You know, Pepper's Ghost, ancient, they did it in Victorian era I think, so none of these are new, but what people are doing is reinventing them into the new world so that they keep finding these things afresh. So the way I've seen the infinity mirror used a lot is sci-fi stuff, mostly going into hillsides or gateways. You know, Stargate would be a classic example. Tamsin, ooh, might have to think about that for Peach Trees. There was a cinema on level 190 where Dredd shot incendiary rounds across the atrium. Yay, that would be cool. That would be really cool. So yeah, and you know, you can get a photo frame that plays video as well. So if you wanted it as a permanent, you didn't want to put a tablet or something in, you can buy digital photo frames that will play a small amount. I bought one to do one and never did the diorama. But it is a very easy thing to do if you Google. If you look on the Google the Internet Machine, it will tell you how to do one. Pepper's Ghost is the short thing. So there's loads of ideas of what you can do with lighting. So let's just think in the last sort of like 20 minutes of what you might want to do with lighting. So tea lights, flickering campfires, flickering torches and flames. Generally, just a broken light might well flicker on and off. If you want to do TV, you can paint it blue and then you put it so you can't see the light. And what you get is that reflected blue light that you see in rooms that aren't particularly well lit but the TV's on, and you get that reflected blue light. So you can do flickering that way. If you buy flashing LEDs, I've got a set down there actually on the side, and they're on the top of antenna like this that didn't print well in FDM because it's a resin design. And they are great for the top. This has actually got a hole in it to mount a LED on, but they're great on the top so that you could have them as a warning light or something. If you want to do fairground rides, you could put flashing LEDs in. They're quite big, but you could put flashing LEDs in, and now I've discovered this evening, you could then link all your other LEDs round to that flashing LED and it will flash. You have to watch your voltage and your current and do all the dividing out of the maths if you're going to do them in series, but you know, it's a great way to add flashing small LEDs into a diorama. And loads of things flash. Vehicles especially flash. Now, I haven't really touched vehicles because I tend to buy them with the lights in, or by the time you've drilled out a HO scale vehicle, added the lights, added the battery and sorted how to turn it on and off, it's actually quite a complex project that probably isn't your beginning thing that you're going to do with LEDs. Polite has a great YouTube channel where he shows, and he's got a motorbike which has like 6 sets of lights or something flashing. I'm like, it's a motorbike in HO scale. It's just like, wow, so cool. Was HO scale, wasn't it? But yeah, you can do all that sort of stuff. So you can buy those flashing LEDs in, I've got them in red because somehow I always wanted red. But you know, whatever you do, there's loads of great ideas you can add in without, you know, going too overboard on the flashing. Anything industrial, flashing lights are going to be a given. Bye, Andy, who's off. Norm says, Dave from Thunder Mesa, who does a big layout, did many particular lighting effects on Gruesome Gulch Narragator layout, including the Pepper's Ghost effect. It's always good to know. You see, people think, oh, it's very sci-fi, but actually I originally learned most of these off my Let's Light Model Railways, Here's Some Fascinating Projects sort of book. And that's where I learned a lot of this stuff. And I've seen it used by people since, but everyone's reinventing the wheel at this point into the modern era. They're not new effects. So you've got flashing, and you can use that anywhere. What you really, one of the things that I think is most interesting, I'm trying to think who it was that did it, engineering. They do gooseneck lamps and they use needles for syringes as the metal, and they thread the wire through. You can get a kit from them to do it. Thread the wire through the syringe for the LED, and then they bend it into a gooseneck shape after they've threaded it. And they do these beautiful fine gooseneck lamps with the wires to the LEDs going through them. So, you know, they're really fine. They look really cool. So people use all sorts of things, from needles, whoever thought of that one, to, you know, when I'm putting the wiring to the top of this antenna, I normally just thread it down the inside of one of these sides and paint it the same colour. And if you're using really thin wires, I use magnet wire a lot. Magnet wire is really thin. It's coated on the outside, so you have to scrape it if you want to use it. It's copper coloured, but it hasn't got any really big sheathing, and you can bend it to shape, and it will, because it's copper, it will keep its shape. And so it's brilliant for going up the insides of, around the outsides of buildings, up the insides of antenna. When you put it there, it more or less stays. Put a little bit of super glue to tack it in place. And it's not too obtrusive when you paint it the colour of whatever it is. So yeah, loads and loads of ideas of what you can do with just a few of the simple LEDs. If you want to go more expansive, then definitely flashing fairy lights and LEDs can add a huge amount. I'm sure you can buy lightning effects and things like that on modules, because I've seen them around. You can buy arc welder modules if you want to put arc welding in, and someone's already done all the heavy lifting for you. If you want to work out how to do it with an Arduino, you can go and look it up on Google, but you can just buy these lighting modules as well. And a lot of people have them, and they're quite simple electronics to them, and it's a very bright white and it arcs, so it's, you know, like a welder. So that's great for industrial areas. And all of these ideas soon build up. So you want, if you're lighting something, you want a load of little light effects around for interest, but you also then want to think about your overhead lighting for everything. On the Jurassic Park, I wanted it to be a night scene, so I controlled the lighting by putting it in a box. And that's effectively what you have to do to get your lighting controlled. It has to be in a light-free box. Now, for a layout room, you can shut all the blinds and put your own layout lighting in, or do what I do and do it in a room with no windows as it was. And you can then control all the lighting, and you can go full-blown LED now to light your layout, day to night cycles, whatever you fancy. With RGB strip, you can do a day to night cycle, you know, all the way through. You will need more than one over the top of the layout, really, to give the spread that you want with a bit of diffusion. If you're doing dioramas and you're putting them in display cases, you could easily light your display cases with something quite interesting. My bookshelf over there has at the back LED lights in it to light the bookshelf. You know, it's a really cool way of making the display look interesting. So there's so many ways you can add them in. If you're going to do something like that, then the USB hub is your friend for wiring it, as it's quite easy to do. So Monsville says, wow, I have a fire engine with LEDs, and motorbike would be cool. It really would be. Oh, Polite retracted his message. Sorry. By Andy. Mark, for really small, tiny lighting, using fibre optic cables with specific colour LEDs, ideal for those fairground lights. Do you know, I've tried fibre optic and I've never got on with it. I've never got enough light out of it. And I think I must be doing it wrong, or maybe I've just got really duff cable. But it doesn't really put enough light out that I feel that I want to use it. So I'd love to probably get it demonstrated properly and see how bright it is. But compared to the output you get from an LED, EL, which is electroluminescence, isn't as bright. The wires you get, or the ones I tried, weren't. And I don't think I really got fibre optics to work. I've seen people do amazing things with them, so I suspect it's just me. So Polite says, there are 2 motorbikes on my channel, but yes, the Prizer BMW has 9 LEDs put in. I can't believe you get that many into a motorbike. It's just unreal. And there is also this thing about restraint. So we've all seen at the shows the model railway where there's 15 catastrophes with flashing police, ambulances, fire engines. Oh, as an aside, I've got a water hose that twists something in the inside that looks like it's spraying water. It's really cool. I must do something with that someday. You know, just so many, it can become too much. And whilst I was talking about that water hose, the other thing that I've experimented with, not successfully yet, you can buy these water humidifiers, and I've got one, and it's about this big, it's white, and it puts out water, and it's got orange LEDs in it, so it looks like it's flaming at the top. Now, partly because my models are glued with white glue, or painted, I'm not that keen on putting water through my models. But actually, water vapour that is atomized as part of one of those sort of little miniature atomizing things is a really cool thing, because when you light it, it can look like fire. So I'm quite intrigued to see that in some future. It has water in it, not great with electronics, but it's an interesting concept. So Monsville, where do you get a BMW with lights? Polite is the answer. Stating the obvious, retroreflective tape is also good, especially if you're photographing the scene. Yeah, and we haven't really, I've mentioned fluorescent pens, but actually anything that reflects and you put a light on it can work just as well. So Tim says, I've used fibre optics a bit, working FNWHR, so that's Festiniog on Welsh Highland Railway Ladybird signals, but the light wasn't that good. It's on my task to work out why one day. Yeah, that was the problem I had. My light wasn't that good. So normally saying vaping units, I've only used my vape with glycerine, and much like water, it has problems in that I think over time you'd end up with a build-up of the glycerine. You can buy like nicotine-free vape fluid, which is mostly just glycerine and cherry sorbet flavour. And I worry about it building up, but vapes is another good way. I actually made one into a homemade fog machine on a video that I used on the Dagobah. That's, I don't know if you can see that, probably not. Dagobah, it's over there. And I'm a huge fan of that sort of little fog effect. It's not lighting, but you can light it. So, you know, you could light it with a green LED and you'd have green fog. Maybe not on your model railway, but you could do it elsewhere. Toxic dump. So there's loads of fun things you can do with lighting, and I've explored a few of them today, and I've shown you a few things I've done in the past. I just picked 4 videos, got to about an hour runtime. I've done far more than that with lighting. I will often light, I'm trying to think, I mean, one of the ones in there's got lighting. I'll often light mech, the eyes especially, and the guns of mech if they light up. It's so easy to just chop away a little bit of a mech, of whatever it is, Gundam or whatever, and put in an LED behind the lights, and it makes such a difference having just even a small LED. I've lit home scratch built stuff, you know, I've done so much lighting, and I do it as simply as possible. I buy pre-wired LEDs for those, and they tend to just go into a converter and then into a micro USB socket now, and that's generally what I've been doing. So Tamsin, looking at Amazon, in-car DVD players might work for the cinema. Ooh, you're getting there. Might be an expensive way, but certainly very cool. Monsville says your vape fog machine look great. I think the problem with my fog machine is it does leak the liquid, so the whole inside is now very slimy. Because there's a hole in the side you fill up, and I overfilled it, so it all leaked out. So it is quite slimy at the moment. I need to clean it up a bit. And it doesn't put out a huge amount, so it's great for spot on small dioramas. To be honest, I often just get my big fog machine out. So Port de Norwich big fog machine, just because it's big. But that puts too much out. So I like the vape one. I think I would like to have a better way of feeding the liquid into it. So I need to have worked on a sort of version 2 for that, I think. So Ravenson Express, put dry ice in hot water and guide the smoke to the diorama, but keep the room well ventilated. I don't, just because I have to get hold of dry ice then, and I'm never quite sure where to get hold of it. So I've always just gone with the glycerine. But yeah, I've seen the dry ice effect done. And what's nice about it is it's quite a sinky sort of fog. So it looks quite realistic. Someone told me to blow my fog over freezer blocks and then it would sink more because it would be cooler. So Captain Neville, you do absolutely magnificent work. Bravo, and thanks for sharing and giving us inspiration. All right, bye for now. So we've only got 5 minutes left. Thank you all for coming for this. And I do feel bad that I said, oh, I'm going to do Thunderbirds. And I've done like 2 videos of Thunderbirds, I think. And it is just sat on the side. I really am struggling with time, and I do appreciate you all hanging around and coming for these live streams, which are, I'm picking topics that are, I think, really interesting. So if anyone's got any topics, drop me a comment on this video afterwards about what topics you think I could discuss in future that you might find interesting. And let me know on my Discord if you're on that instead, because that would be easy. Just let me know if there's anything you particularly want me to discuss, because I suspect, as I'm having a couple of weeks off and I've still got the Kickstarter to get out and then answer any questions from people, that I may not get much done on the Thunderbirds before the next one as well. So if that's the case, and I have got stuff that was on the first video but it hasn't progressed, if that's the case, then I'll be looking for a topic to talk about. So let me know if you fancy anything. And but I think the chat's going to end now, so we'll put it in comments. Norm says, thank you, Kathy. Got lots of great lighting techniques. Take care. Bye all. See you next month. Thanks, Norm. Thanks for my moderators, Norm, Digger and Timber, for keeping you in order. And yeah, lighting. Always think simple. You know, unless you enjoy doing Arduinos, go simple first. And my challenge for you is to put a tea light somewhere in your modelling. Somewhere, just somewhere to use one, because they are so cool. They are just so useful. And I will be doing lava geysers with them. My lava geyser sadly doesn't look very geysery at the moment. It's hard to capture lava geysers, but I will be doing one for the Kickstarter, so you'll see one eventually. But yeah, so Nick says loads of really good ideas tonight, really helpful. That's cool. Polite, many thanks for this very interesting stream today. Goodbye and have a great time. So finishing 3 minutes early because my voice is going, funnily enough. I don't get to talk enough, obviously. I don't get enough practice nowadays. But night, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all on the next one. And take care. Have a good one. And thanks as ever for all your support. Bye, folks. And it's this one.